Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Ultra hardware number 44700. This is a keyed combination, this is a push-button combination lock. There is no key involved. In a polished brass finish. A knob on the exterior, thumb turn on the interior. It's a deadbolt model. And this first portion of the video will go over a visual review of the item with dimensional properties. We'll get into changing the handing should that need to be done. We'll talk about how to prep the door, the templating of the material. We're going to review the actual physical template, the dimensional drawing. We're going to go over the installation aspect, how to get it applied to the door, and at the end we'll go over the reset code instructions, which you might want to address immediately because the units do come with a code that is indicated there. You might want to change that right out of the box. That'll be near the end of the video. So here we go, a visual review. Here's the exterior aspect, your push button with your large thumb turn or turn knob. This lock is available in polished brass and satin chrome. The satin chrome is a 44710 is the part number. The 44705 is the discontinued antique brass model of this. There used to be 3 colors, now there's only 2. Combination chamber back here. Let's go over let's go over dimensional properties as we do this. Overall height of the body itself is about 5 5/8. Overall width is about 1 5/8 inches. Projection of the body itself looks like it's about 13/16. To the push buttons, it's about 1 1/16 inches. Then to the outside of the turn knob is about 1 7/16. Okay. A couple of posts there that you're going to use to thread the inside aspect to. As we move through the lock from the exterior, the next piece would be the rubber escutcheon, of which you'll get 2. They are identical. You're going to install those. Give a little aspect of a weather seal concept to that item. Obviously, your dimensions are going to change marginally once you add this to the door. It adds about 1/8 of an inch to all the prior dimensions. Give you an overall size, and again, there are 2 as you go through the door. Overall size of the rubber escutcheon, 6 inch by 2 inch. The latch bolts. Here you go. The deadbolt latch. Okay. Let's check the dimensional properties of this item. This back set is going to be 2 3/8. Projection of the bolt itself, just shy on 1 inch. They would call that 1 inch. The width, 1 inch. The height, that's 2 1/4. 2 3/8 latch bolt. This is not. Universal. It cannot be changed. There are, I'm going to pull up the manual for this and see if there's an option for 2 3/4. Here we go. As we're waiting for that document to load, I'll show you the interior portion. Your thumb turn. Okay. Overall dimensions of the inside, about 5 9/16, about 1 9/16 inches. Thickness of the plate looks like it's about 3/8. To the outside of the thumb turn, looks like it's about 1 1/4 inches. Now, latch bolt options. Indeed, there are. The deadbolt for this lock is going to be the 06970, and there is a link below this video to that 2 3/4 bolt as an option. If you need or want to do 2 3/4, you'll order that as an additional line item. They're not going to do a swap. Okay, here we go. We've got the latch bolt. Then, finally, you have your package of screws and spindles and whatnot. We're going to get into that a little bit more as we get into the installation aspect in the latter part of this video. The strike height, 2 3/4, and the width, about 1 1/8", and that's very typical and standard for this item. There is no dust box included, so do be mindful of that. There is no dust box. If you want one, you'll have to source one separately, and we can help you with that. Just simply reach out to us. It's something that people don't think about, and frankly, if I didn't mention it, it wouldn't be a thought. But a dust box is a contraption that mounts behind the strike, so that if you were to stick your finger inside of here, it would just hit the interior of that box that's on the back. The point of that is it is a handy way to be able to prevent, well, not only being able to see the rough cut that's in the frame itself, but prevent the transmission of particulate from inside the wall exiting out this hole is what that is for. Dust box. If you need one of those, we will help you with that. Okay, the second portion of this video on the 44700 is the rehanding procedure. In the link below this video to the installation instructions, that is going to be discussed or detailed. The installation instructions on a lot of items that I have reviewed that are imported from Asia, the installation instructions are often things that are not written very clearly, although the data is there. But because I conclude that they're written by someone whose first language is not English, they will sometimes say the same thing twice, and they'll say it in different words, and you wonder, why are you saying this twice? But then once you realize it's written by someone whose first language is not English, you can then step back and review the material with a different set of eyes and understand that you're trying to pull the data out of the installation instructions. For instance, the rehanding procedure, installation instructions, there will be some deviations between the genuine product and what's on the paper, and also what is stated. So the rehanding instructions state that this lock is for a right-hand door. Your door is going to be right-hand, so it's going to operate this way from your perspective. Okay. You cannot, when it's locked, you cannot turn it clockwise. You can always turn it counterclockwise. When I'm trying to turn it clockwise, it doesn't move that tail piece hardly at all. When I turn it counterclockwise, it will always move in that direction. The net effect of that is when the lock is installed on the door, you can, regardless of having the code or not, always lock the door. If it's unlocked, you can always come and lock it. But, however, you can never unlock the door unless you first enter the code. The locking of the door, if the door is already locked and you rotate it counterclockwise, it does nothing because the bolt's already projected. Okay. The counterclockwise does two things. It will throw the bolt, which doesn't matter if it's already locked, and it will clear the code. So you can't just, turn it clockwise to unlock unlock it. For a right-hand door, when the latch bolt is installed, when the latch bolt is installed, and it's going to look like this. Okay. And I've got a tail piece placed in there temporarily. We're going to look like this. So now you're on the inside of that right-hand door. Okay. From the outside perspective, again, I can turn it counterclockwise, but that does nothing because the lock's already locked. I cannot turn it clockwise to unlock it. If I were to turn that more, I would probably destroy the lock. Or, you know what I mean. It's locked. Don't turn it any further. When I enter the code, that's the code of this lock. Ignore the C. The C is for code. 1467X is what you need to enter. You don't have to enter them in order. You can enter them in any order that you like, so long as that combination of buttons are depressed. 1, 6, 7. I had a 4 and then an X. I did not enter those in order, but I entered them. I can then... don't think I cleared the code. 1, 6, 7, 4, X. I entered the proper code. I could then turn it clockwise to retract that bolt. I can now no longer turn it clockwise again, but I can turn it counterclockwise to re-latch that bolt. That's for a right-hand door. Obviously, if you have a left-hand door, you're going to need to change the function, because you ought to have the ability to always unlock it, but never lock it without the code, which is not what you want. Now, the installation instructions call out, remove the 2 blue head screws. Well, those screws that are on there are not blue, they're red. And however, there are the only screws on the back side. Okay, so I am going to using the camera above me, that camera above me, let's draw that up a bit bigger. I'm going to take my, I'll turn it around to hold it towards you. I'm going to carefully, with one hand, control the plate. Keep your fingers on it. Don't let it move. I'm going to loosen the first screw. I'm going to be ultra careful to not lose it. I'm going to, while I'm still controlling the plate, I'm going to remove the second screw. And controlling the plate, regardless, is basically means there's probably something spring-loaded underneath there, and there indeed is. The plate, I happen to know this lock, the plate has springs in it, and you can carefully lift it out of place. All of those springs are captive. They're not going to go anywhere, so there's nothing to be concerned with about that. But be careful with it. Don't do anything to it. There are a variety of additional pins that are put in there. Okay. The rehanding instruction says remove the 2 blue screws, take off rectangular lid. We've done that. They were red. Pull up the pin and insert it into the right hole and install the supporting pole from left to right hole. So none of that makes any sense at all. But what they're saying is pull up the pin and insert it on the hole that's on the right. So right now when you look at this, that pin is on the left. Take the pin out of this side and put it into the right side. To do that, doing a little bit of locksmithing work here, we'll always have tweezers around. Lift that pin out and do not lose it. And put it into the opposite side, just like I've done. I've got that put in the opposite position. It's now here when it was initially here. Carefully take that plate and reseat it down. Control the plate. Make sure that it fits down real nice. And I'm discovering that this does not at this moment fit down real nice. So something's occurred. It could be operator error. It is. Okay, so whatever I did, I reseated it. Control that and put your 2 screws back in. Now, I'm not going to do that in this video because this is going direct to a client, and I'm just going to put it back the way I found it. Move this over to the left side because it's a right-hand lock. is. So what I noticed was that pin didn't sit down flush, and when I tapped on it a couple of times, it still didn't move. But when I rotated the knob slightly, it allowed that pin to fully seat, which is why the plate did not sit flat the first time through. I'm going to tighten that first screw. I'm still controlling it. Not overly tight. You don't need anything excessively tight. Okay. Now we're back to the way we were. The knob still turns real nice and functions. And this portion of the video is to serve as a review of the template interpretation for the Ultra Hardware 4700, 44705, which is discontinued, and the 44710 combination deadbolt. So there is a link below this video to the template. Two sides to this single sheet of paper, and studying the template, there appears to be no change whatsoever, except for the fact that the one side is for 2 3/8, and the opposite side is for 2 3/4. Okay. If you're doing the lock standard, the way it's shipped, it's 2 3/8. The latch bolt that's in there is 2 3/8. I would certainly recommend that you do a reality check. Edge of the door to the center of this hole. Edge of the plate to the center should be 2 3/8. Double check it before you go cutting holes in your door. This is a 2-scale template. It's full scale. They have 2 3/8 again, 2 3/4 titled. You can fold that over along that dotted line and get this item physically attached to the door. Now, certainly before proceeding with just assuming that it's accurate, I would absolutely suggest that you double check the paper with a tape measure, which I'm doing here. I'm measuring from this line to the center line of here to make sure that it is accurately the dimension as stated, and it is. It's right on. So I've verified that back set dimension, and I would safely assume that all other dimensions are correct, except that I would simply double check them. And here's why you double check them. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Double check them, always without exception. I do, not trying to be inane about the process, but I double check before I drill someone's door. This dimension is shown at 5 1/8 of an inch, and it appears to be accurate. But I want to impress on you the importance of doing so. I would double check all of them because I've seen them wrong in the past, and for a moment there I thought this one was incorrect, but it's not. It's accurate. The advantage of this type of template is that once you're verified it's correct, and you're going to get it literally reviewed. Now, once you've got it confirmed and you know everything's accurate, it is time to drill some holes. However, the issue with just drilling some holes is we have to have a little discussion in terms of what backset means. As I'm doing that. The term backset is the dimension from the edge of the door to the center of the hole. Edge of the door to the center of the hole. However, it requires a further explanation. Now, that further explanation is simply do this. The edge of the door to the center of the hole is called backset. However, the backset is actually defined as the dimension from the center point of the door. So if your door is 1 3/4 inches thick, it's not measured from the push side or from the pull side. When you hook a tape measure on the edge of the door, it's not measured there. It's actually from the center of that 1 3/4 inches thick door. Why does that matter? It doesn't if your door is square-edged, but it does matter if your door is beveled, and most doors are beveled. As you can, in your mind's eye, if this dimension from the center of this hole is 2 3/8, if you measured it from here over to the center, or if you can measure it from here to the center, you'll see that those dimensions would actually be different. The value of the bevel is what is defined as 1/8 in 2. For every 2 inches in door thickness, for every 2 inches in thickness, this 3-degree bevel is going to change by 1/8 of an inch. So 1 3/4 is not 2, so it's going to be just less than 1/8 of an inch. It's going to be 1/8, but just a little bit less. The point being is, if your door is beveled, you have to account for that. Because if you hook your tape measure on the pull side of the door, which would be the big side of the door, versus the small side of the door on a beveled door, you are going to be off. Those holes are going to be off. How to test? Measure the width of the door on one side, measure the width of the door on the other side, and if those dimensions are different, you have a beveled edge door. If your door is 1 3/4 inches, I would simply adjust. I would go on the high side, I would deduct, or actually I would add, the high side is the pull side of the door. I would add 1/8 of an inch, pardon me, a 1/16 of an inch. If I am measuring from the small side of the door, I would adjust accordingly. I would add 1/8 of an inch to that dimension for the back side. If you put the tape measure on the pull side of the door, the inside of the door, and marked over at 2 3/8, your hole is actually going to be too far over. You need to add a little dimension to that, because of where you need to end up. Okay? So to put that another way, if I was on the pull side of the door, if I'm doing 2 3/8, I'd probably go to 2 7/16. And on the small side of the door, I would probably go to 2 5/16. And then at that point, your holes are going to be, when drilled from either side, you're going to be in line with all of that. That is not noted on this template at all, and frankly it should be. And it's simply not. It may not matter on this lock if you are literally shifted that far over. If you measured 2 3/8 on the high side only and went through it. But when you are measuring from both sides and drilling and meeting in the middle of the door, which you would want to do, you don't want to take this 1 9/16 hole that you're going to drill and just push the drill through the door. As you exit the opposite side, you will rupture the door out and possibly damage it. So you don't want to do that. You want to get that, if you're going to use the paper template, I would adjust. I would kick it over a little bit if I was drilling on the high side. But realistically, what I would probably do is not use this template if I had a beveled edge door. I would understand the relationship of the location of the holes. Okay. And I would mark both sides of the door manually. I would, with a pencil, I would then double check those dimensions, and then I would use a center punch to just tap my holes. That's what I would do. So on the template, we're giving you this long horizontal line here. that is going to be the center line of the latch bolt. Okay. And as it occurs on templates, very occasionally they're missing a dimension. And without it, you can't be completely accurate. What they're missing is you have this 3/8 hole to this 3/8 hole. You know those are 5 1/8. That's good. You've got 1 inch up from this hole to this hole. What you don't have is the offset from this hole down to the horizontal line of the lock. And the tape measure measuring the template itself shows it at 1/8 of an inch. I would do a reality check on that. I would make sure that where I've got to drill that 1 9/16 hole, frankly, I don't know why they need such a large hole. When you inspect the back side of the hardware, nowhere on here, any piece is making you drill such a giant hole. Really all that hole is accommodating is the spindle to run through the door. You could certainly get, they're probably drilling that hole so large because it's plenty room to stuff it all in there, nothing to worry about. You don't need such a big hole. You'd probably get away with something that's a lot smaller than that. Also, they're giving you that big hole because they're not telling you that 1/8 of an inch offset dimension, which, with such a huge hole, it wouldn't really matter so much because they've got 3/8 of an inch holes here and down here, and be a lot of play on that lock. I like to measure things with a caliper and determine accurately how, if there is a more elegant way to prep the door involving a deviation from the template, you're going to measure everything. A caliper would be a good way to do that. Following the template, my tape measure tells me I got 1/8 of an inch here. I would mark my center line of where the latch bolt's going to be, the center line of this, wherever you're putting it at. 48 inch above the finished floor to the center line of the latch bolt. Wherever you're going to locate the deadbolt. 48 inch from the finished floor to the center line of the deadbolt would be considered a standard location for a deadbolt. Put it anywhere you like. Mark that center line up 1/8 of an inch to get that 1 9/16 hole, down 1 inch to drill that 3/8 hole, 5 1/8 up to get that hole with another 3/8. You're going to drill a 1 inch hole in the edge of the door, all the way through to the 1 9/16 cavity. Okay, 1 inch hole. And as I'm looking at that, I still don't see that 1 inch hole that's going to go through it, whatever center line you put it at. It's going to communicate down to here. Don't see the reason to have such a large 1 9/16 hole. Whatever. Following the template, 1 9/16 hole, 1 inch crossbore, not crossbore, but hole in the edge of the door. You're going to route that 2 1/4 by 1 inch wide face. The depth of that is generally 5/32 of an inch. They don't give you that dimension on the template at all. Not at all. And again, that's normal, especially with imported hardware. Caliper, the woodworker's true best friend, in my opinion. 0.124 inch, so just less than 1/8 of an inch thickness of the material. That's how deep the prep will be for the faceplate. Okay. You've got 3 holes through the door. You've got a 1 inch hole in the edge. You've got a routed preparation with squared corners for the latch bolt. You've double checked all your dimensions before you used your center punch. You marked it with a pencil on both sides. You've double checked all your dimensions. You center punched everything. You drilled your pre-drill holes, went halfway through with the full-size bits, checked it. Everything should be nice, clean, and neat. And at that point, you are ready to begin installation of the lock. Hello, my name is Rich Howard, and this portion of the video review of the Ultra, their part number 44700, is going to discuss the installation aspect of this lock, physically attaching it to the door. So far we have gone over a review of the visual review with dimensional properties, how to rehand the lock should you need to. We have discussed the template itself and how to prep the door for the lock hardware. This is where you get the lock installed. So there's a link below this video to the installation instructions, and we have already accomplished step 1, which is the rehanding of the lock should that be necessary. We have already accomplished most of step 2, installing the lock. Apply the template to the door, measure, drill, etc., etc. Step 2, section C, is where we pick up. Place rubber escutcheon outside of door. Actually, that's not accurate. The first step is to install the latch bolt. The latch bolt will be, once the door is chiseled and mortised, the latch bolt goes in. Be sure to pre-drill those holes for the screws, and screws are included for those. A combination wood and machine thread will allow you to run that into any or either door type. That's an 832 flat undercut head and a complementary finish. Latch bolt's going to go in first, and that's common for all lock sets. Okay. Then you bring your rubber gasket. Your lock will sit down to it like that. Then all that's going to go through the door into your holes, and at this point it's going to look like that. Looking at the rest of step C to make sure we don't miss I don't miss a portion of this. Okay. Second page of the installation instructions. Select the proper length of spindle and insert this into the lock from the select the proper length of spindle and insert this in the slot lock body from outside of door. For both series, spindle must be inserted to the slot of the outside lock body through the slot of latch bolt. What they're saying is this is already on the exterior. From the interior side is where you're going to insert one of the two tail pieces, and they're same piece of hardware, just different lengths. They are both marked, and let's look at the markings now. You're going to have the short one you really can't see what that says, for 1 inch to 1 3/8 inch doors. This, according to the installation instructions, will work only on a door that is step 2, section E. Use the 3-inch spindle for doors that are from 1 3/16 to 1 3/4 thick. And the 3 3/8 spindle for a door that's 1 3/4 to 2 inch, which is in conflict with what's written on here. I'm going to say that the stampings on the spindle will be more accurate. 1 inch to 1 3/8, use the short one. The longer one, which is probably what you're going to use, is going to be for well, they say 40 millimeter around there because I can't see if it's 1 3/16. 1 divided by 25.4 times 40 millimeter. That's 1.57. So 1 9/16 to 2 1/8. So you're probably going to use the longer spindle for your installation. They say that it's 3 3/8 in length. It's 3 7/16. The shorter spindle is 3 1/8. Probably going to use the long one. This is going to come in, and obviously I won't be able to really emulate this accurately with only 2 hands, from the inside of the hole, it's going to go through, and the latch bolt's going to be retracted when you're doing this installation, through there and then down into that slot, so that it's going to look like that. Okay? I've already made a mistake. Forgive me. This is set up for a right-hand door, so we have to be doing it properly for a right-hand door. And it'll look like that. That's the exterior of your right-hand door. Okay? Then, once you've got all that set, backing up a little bit, Section 2, Step D, select the proper length spindle. Section E is the same stuff we've just talked about. F, place rubber escutcheon on inside of door. Install the back plate to the door so the dot on the knob is aligned with the right dot, the right-hand side dot. Dot here, dot here. If you're doing the stock right-hand installation, you'll put that on the right-hand side before you insert it into the lock, because it's all timed at that point. The location of the thumb turn in the unlocked position is considered a timed piece of hardware. Like I said, it's not easy when you're doing it with only one hand. Go. I did have that tailpiece in backwards, but you realize that the moment you try to put it together, because it just will not fit. Okay, here we go. Got that. And as I was following those installation instructions to align that handle with the dot on the right, I had stated that you place it on the right side, but you don't. You place it on the left side, as shown in the drawing, and that's confirmed as accurate. It needs to look like that. Forgive me, it'll be pointed away from the door edge. You're looking at the inside of the door, and it will travel this way. It's pointed away from the door edge, this being the door edge here. So when that dot is lined up properly, you will certainly be able to fully operate the lock, where you can lock and unlock it from the inside. Well, okay, so I don't like misspeaking, obviously, because you're watching this for help. Place rubber escutcheon on inside a door, step F, F of section 2. Install inside backplate to the door so dot mark on the knob is aligned with the right dot mark on the backplate. I think the term should be correct dot, not right dot, because I didn't look at the drawing and assumed it had to go to the right, and when I was testing it to show you, it didn't work, and then I analyzed it further and realized it must mean the correct dot, not the right dot. Okay, so when it's aligned correctly, that fully functions. I can turn that, lock it, unlock it. The outside, it's the I can always throw the lock, as I've demonstrated earlier. I can always throw it out. I can't unlock it, okay, when I've got my... That's not going to go. I had said earlier that your code is 1467X. That C in the front now, it comes in at this point of the installation, where the C is down here, and that's the clear button. That makes absolutely sure that the code is not retained. Throwing the lock does that. We've demonstrated that earlier, but it would be proper etiquette to always push the clear button, and that requires a lot of force to push, noticeably more than the other buttons. So it was 1, 4, 6, 7, X. And at that point, oh, I think I pushed the wrong button. 1, 4, 6, 7, X. And that allows you to unlatch. I realized my arm was in the way, but I could throw that and unlock it. And then, of course, just relock it again. Okay. So that all works splendidly. We've gone through the installation instructions and determined where I made an initial verbal mistake, but then kind of weeded through the somewhat unclear installation instructions. We did not talk about the mortising of the strike. You're going to want to do that, of course, and the dimension given, the center line of the latch bolt, when measured, let's say, from the top of the door, is going to be X. This dimension will be the same dimension plus about 1/8 of an inch. Whatever the dimension is from the top of the door to the inside of the header, where you're going to take that tape measure and bump it up to the inside of the header, add that dimension, the margin between the top of the door and the inside of the header. It's generally 1/8 of an inch. Or if you can measure to a solid floor and you go 48 inch from the finished floor, that can be your center line for both pieces. But if you're going to hook the tape measure to the top of the door and then come down, be sure when you transfer that dimension to the frame, you're adding that margin. It's probably 1/8 of an inch. Section 2, Step 2, Section G, closed door. Decide the position where the spring latch applies to the face. We're not doing a spring latch, so that doesn't apply to us. Section 3, to operate the lock. The inside is always operable by turning the inside knob. You can always lock it and unlock it. We've demonstrated that. Now, if you're curious, the reason that works and is not related, because it's what might be referred to as a lazy spindle principle. Lazy spindle. That preparation that's inside of that receiver allows for the spindle to rotate in that fashion. Okay? But when everything is installed correctly and timed, that spindle cannot be turned because the lock chassis assembly is preventing it from turning. But on the inside, because you've got that amount of play inside of there, that will always allow the inside to work because it's what's called a lazy tailpiece. I don't know if it's properly called lazy on this, but the concept would be considered a lazy tailpiece, where you can throw a deadbolt either way and be able to take the key out in a traditional deadbolt and make that all work for you. Okay. Lazy tailpiece, I may have moved off a little bit quick on that. Okay, moved off of the strike. The size we demonstrated earlier, the thickness of this, and whether or not you're going to have a dust box that will alter the thickness of what you're dealing with. But this measures 50 thousandths, so not even a 1/16 of an inch. So you'll mortise that and chisel it accordingly. The Section 3, to operate the lock, the inside is always operable. We discussed that with the lazy principle. To enter lock, push the set of codes on buttons and turn the outside knob. If you reset the code, refer to the attached sheet, How to Reset Code. To lock, simply close the door. If it's a spring latch, which this one is not, it'll automatically lock. If it's a deadbolt, you have to turn the thumb turn. Okay. The remark at the very bottom of the installation instructions tells you to always press the C or clear button. Okay. I find that throwing the bolt means you can't go back at all. So the code is technically clear, although sometimes you'll encounter by re-entering the code that it doesn't work the first time, but entering clear, listen for a click. You may have heard that click in the microphone. That's the resetting or the clearing of the code is what that does. 1, 4, 6, 7, X allows that to turn. Okay. Push clear every time after you use it, and probably every time before you use it. If you push clear when you lock the door and don't push clear when you come back and you discover that entering the code doesn't work, for sure someone's pushed some of the buttons would be what that would mean. At least to me, that's what it would mean. The rest of the installation instructions, what we've not discussed, is the screws to hold the lock body together, the screws to hold the latch bolt in, and we have a couple of other pieces I want to quickly review to make sure we've not missed anything. These pieces must be installed. They are going to thread into the exterior chassis and must be done very early on. Like that. That is going to allow you to have a very reliable installation of the latch bolt physically not moving at all in the installation. Okay. Works very nice, the combination. It's not retracting the latch bolt naturally because there's no tail piece. But I'm going to demonstrate that to you now just so that we can take a look at it. Clear 1467X. Okay. Those pins are going to keep that latch bolt real secure in the edge of the door. You absolutely want to have those, and that's why it's revealed. I had read the installation instructions. I had discovered that the hole seemed far too large, but I failed to investigate that fully. That's why you need that 1 9/16 hole. That's what these two brass pins indeed are for. And if you have installed the lock without them, and you've got them left over, which you will, take everything off, put those back in, put those down in there, and reinstall. Latch bolt won't have to come out. That's going to keep it real straight. Okay, the final section of this will be how to change the code, the last portion. This final portion of the video review of the Ultra hardware number 44700 is to go over changing the code or combination on the lock. There is a link below this video to the 2-page document that will go through it, and this video will give us a visual review. First of all, you're going to want to remove the cover, and I'm going to alter the size of our inserted video here so that we can see that. Okay, so I've got that down on my desktop. That's here. I'm going to flip it around actually so that it's pointed towards you a little bit. So the instructions say that you are to remove the blue head screws. They're red on this lock. Cover this rear plate prior to removing anything because it's all spring loaded. Okay. Okay, and here we go. Got that. I'm going to use my 2 fingers to control that rectangular plate because there are springs underneath it. I'm going to remove that first screw, and there are only 2 to remove. They're red, even though the instructions say blue. Then carefully just okay, so we've got the 2 screws removed, and now we're going to pull that plate off, and be careful because it's literally loaded with springs. They're captive, but you know, you want to be quite careful with it. So, per the installation instructions, what they're saying to us is that there are, page 2 is where we are right now, step 3, on the lock body with 14 wafer holes, 5 red marked wafers are identified digits for the unlocking codes, preceded by the C button. 8 blue marked wafers are neutral codes. 1 plain wafer is clear one for restoring numbers to free position. Okay, now let's go over that language one more time. On the lock body with 14 wafer holes. On the lock body with 14 wafer holes. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times 2, 14. Okay? What you're going to have, then it says that you've got 5 that are red, 8 that are blue, and then 1 that's clear. So you can see that 1 and 6 at the top are clearly red. You can see that 7 is red. X you can kind of see is red. All the rest are blue. Well, 4 is red. And then the C is what they call clear. The C actually has a different shape to it. The red are the ones that control the combination. The red ones correlate to the combination. So what they're basically saying that you would do is you would extract a red and swap it out for a blue. Whatever combination you want, that has to have the red wafers. They give 2 extra wafers in the packaging. 1 is red and 1 is blue. They are different in how they are notched, making them actually, 1 is notched at the top, the other is notched at the bottom. Okay. Now the first thing that I like to do is inspect the, do a reality check on the parts. And what we're dealing with here is the wafers that we've discussed. Moving through the rest of the installation instruction. Step 3, Section A. Hold and push the C button. Hold and push at the time while reset the code. Pull out identified and neutral. Pull out identified and neutral wafers. Insert the identified wafers to the desired number holes. Note, always leave square cut shape of the wafers face out. Okay. And then moving into the actual changing of the material, the only thing that you really have to realize is the code is many things to realize. The code is a 5-digit code. You can turn it into a 6-digit code, or you can change it to a 4-digit code because of those included additional wafers. There is an identified, which is red, which is the code, which is, part of the code. Then there is the neutral, which is blue. So if you want to add it to 6, remove a neutral, add an identified, because you have an extra identified. Okay, and you'll have 2 neutral. And then vice versa to turn into a 4-digit code. I find that you can depress the clear. Tweezers are included as well. Okay. If I wanted to, part of that code was going to be the numeral 1 was in the code. I can take those tweezers and pull that wafer out. The notch always needs to be to the outside of the lock body. If it's on where I pulled it out of 1 here, the wafer needs to be on this side, okay, which it was the way that I pulled it out. And if I was simply going to change that identified wafer with 2 which is a neutral wafer, which is not currently part of it. I'm going to pull that one out. And I'm just going to swap those. Okay? I'm going to put the neutral where the 1 was. And I'm going to put the identified where the 2 was. Now what I notice is I'm not able to get those pushed down until I push the C, the clear button, and that will allow me to get those pushed down to where they are. And you want to make sure that they're completely seated all the way down, otherwise the clear button won't pop back out. So now the code has been changed to C2467X. And we can test that. I'm going to push C. 2, 4, 6, 7, X. And then I can indeed rotate that, okay, to make that lock. Actually, there it is. Okay, I rotate it, and I'm rotating it still. It doesn't behave properly because the springs aren't there to push the wafers back down, and the wafers have to be seated in the proper. They have to be in the proper position to allow that to turn. And because the springs aren't included or aren't installed, I can continue to rotate that. But if I were to seat all of those items down, all of the wafers back to their final position, this unit would be locked. Okay, I've got them seated, and now I'm locked again. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to restore this back to the original combination by flipping out my neutral, my blue, back to the 2, and my identified red back to the 1. Push my clear so I can get them seated down properly. All of them, actually. And it's locked. And that's how you do that. Basically, switch the red for the blue. Record which ones are red. That's your combination. The notches have to be towards the outside of the housing. The tip is pointed towards the top so you can see it. That's the notch right there. Tip pointed towards the top, that's the notch. Right there. Okay? But when you study them, you'll see that they are indeed like that. Reds are a combination, record those numbers, notches towards the outside, push the C button, clear, seat all of them down, put your cover back on, which we're going to do right now. We're going to just imagine that I didn't switch them back, because I did actually test them, so I knew that the switch worked. 2 screws go back in. The plate fits down real nice here, so I know that I've got everything seated properly. Not overly tight on the screws. Pushing the C for clear, we're back at 1, 4, 6, 7, X. That did not work. I'm pushing clear again. 1, 4, 6, 7, X. Worked perfectly. Don't know what happened the first time. Maybe the wafer didn't seat itself back down. Maybe I didn't seat it properly the first time. That's how you'll change the combination. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Ultra hardware products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you have any questions on the Ultra 44700 combination lock or any other Ultra product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.